Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're gearing up for the NABARD Grade A exam, you're in the right place. We are going to power through the absolute must-know topics for economic and social issues. Think of this as a high-yield, no-fluff revision session designed to get these core concepts locked in your brain. So let's dive right in. Okay, here's our game plan. We've broken this down into 4 key areas. First, we'll hit the big ones: poverty and employment, the foundational challenges. Then we'll get into the human side of things with India's demographics. After that, it's all about the solutions, taking a rapid look at the key rural schemes. And we'll wrap up by looking ahead at the Sustainable Development Goals and climate action. It's a clear roadmap for what you need to know.
All right, let's kick things off with the absolute core of the syllabus. Honestly, understanding poverty and employment is the whole reason institutions like NABARD even exist. Everything else kind of builds on this foundation.
First things first, you've got to know the difference here. Relative poverty, that's basically about inequality, right? It's about how you're doing compared to the average person in your society. But for India, and definitely for your exam, the real focus is on absolute poverty. We're talking about the raw struggle for basic survival: food, shelter, the essentials. It's measured against a fixed poverty line, and the #1 goal is to lift people above that line.
Now, how we measure this has actually changed a lot over time. You see a clear evolution here. Back in the day, the Lakdawala Committee was mostly focused on calories. Could you afford enough food? But the Tendulkar Committee, that was a huge shift. It recognized that being poor isn't just about being hungry. It's also about not having access to healthcare or education. That conceptual jump is a super important point to remember.
When we're talking about unemployment in rural India, these 3 are the big ones. Now, structural unemployment, that's skills mismatch, that's a problem everywhere. But for agriculture, you have to zoom in on disguised and seasonal unemployment. Disguised unemployment is basically when you have too many people working on a farm. You know, if 2 people left, the total output wouldn't even drop. And seasonal is pretty self-explanatory. It's tied to the cycles of planting and harvesting.
Just take a second to let this number sink in. Over 85%. That's how much of India's workforce is in the informal sector. What does that mean? It means no job security, no benefits, no social safety net, and really unpredictable income. This is the day-to-day reality for the vast majority of rural workers, and it's a huge focus of NABARD's entire mission.
Okay, so we've looked at the problems. Now let's shift gears and talk about the people. Because you really can't understand India's development story without understanding its demographics. You will almost certainly see this term on your exam, the demographic dividend. The easiest way to think about it is like a limited time opportunity for a country's economy. It's that sweet spot in time when you have more people of working age than you have dependents, kids, and the elderly. This massive workforce can, in theory, fuel incredible economic growth. But, and this is a huge but, this dividend is not automatic. It's not a guarantee. In fact, it can turn into a demographic disaster if you have a massive young population that is uneducated, unhealthy, and can't find jobs. So to actually cash in on this dividend, you need these 4 pillars to be strong: education, health, stable governance, and, critically, economic policies that create enough good quality jobs. Now this number, this is an absolute game changer. India's total fertility rate, or TFR, has dropped to 2.0. That's below the replacement level of 2.1. In simple terms, what this means is that our population growth is finally hitting the brakes. We're on a path to population stabilization. This is a massive, massive milestone in India's demographic story. So, we've covered the challenges and the demographic picture. Now, let's talk about what the government is actually doing about it. We're going to do a rapid-fire review of 3 massive flagship schemes that you absolutely positively have to know inside and out. First on the list, the giant, MGNREGA. At its heart, the main goal here is to give a basic level of livelihood security, a safety net, by guaranteeing people paid work. Okay, if you remember one thing about MGNREGA, remember this. It is a legal right. This isn't a government favor. It's the law. It's demand-driven, which means if you ask for work, they have to provide it. The key facts for your exam are the 100-day guarantee of unskilled work, the focus on creating useful assets like ponds and roads, and that crucial 33% reservation for women.
Next, we have DAY NRLM. Now, if MGNREGA is about wage employment, think of NRLM as being all about self-employment and creating small businesses. Its core strategy, its main weapon, is organizing the rural poor, especially women, into self-help groups, or SHGs.
And boom, this is where NABARD plays a starring role. The whole mission is built around these SHGs. It helps them get access to banks, to get loans through the SHG Bank Linkage Program. It also helps with training and support. This scheme is an absolute engine for financial inclusion and women's empowerment in rural India.
And our third key scheme is PMA Grameen. The objective is simple, but it's incredibly powerful: housing for all in the countryside. The scheme gives families money to help them build a proper, permanent or Pakka house. Now, here's a classic exam-style detail you need to know. How do they pick who gets the house? The beneficiaries are identified using data from the socio-economic caste census of 2011. This helps target the most deprived households. And remember, the funding for this is a partnership, shared between the central government and the states. All right, for our final section, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because rural development today isn't just a local thing anymore. It's all tied up with global goals and, frankly, the existential threat of climate change.
The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are basically the world's to-do list. And if you look at these 5, they are practically NABARD's job description. Of course, no poverty and zero hunger have always been its bread and butter. But now, you see climate action right there. It's becoming just as important for the future of rural India.
And that leads us to this really critical shift that's happening in agriculture. The conversation is no longer just about how to grow more food. It's about how to build a resilient system that can withstand shocks. We're talking about climate-proofing our farms by using different crops, adopting water-saving tech like micro-irrigation, and just getting smarter about managing risks. So we end with the biggest question of all, the one that ties everything together. Will India's huge young population create a development miracle, or will it turn into a demographic disaster? The answer really depends on whether we can pull it all off, educating our youth, creating good jobs, and building a strong, resilient rural economy. That's the challenge that people at institutions like NABARD wake up to every single day. I really hope this rapid revision was helpful. All the very best for your exam.